I took a night shift job, but the store wasn't supposed to exist. Have you ever answered a call and immediately regretted it? I did. It was 11:45 p.m. when my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but I picked it up anyway. A slow, deliberate breath came through the line before a voice spoke. You start tonight. No introduction. No confirmation of my name. Just that. I hesitated. Who is this? The manager. The voice said flatly. Something about the way he spoke unsettled me, like he was reading from a script. All right, I muttered. When do I? The line went dead. No interview, no schedule, nothing. If you ever worked the night shift in a giant empty store, you know how unnatural it feels. The aisles stretch out forever. The fluorescent lights hum constantly, and no matter how many cameras they install, there are always blind spots. I didn't think about that when I accepted the night shift at a local superstore. Rent was due, and I needed cash. It was supposed to be simple, just restocking shelves and making sure no one walked out with unpaid items. I figured I'd just listen to music, do my work, and go home. But the moment I stepped inside, I realized something was very wrong. I reached the store that never closes, but it is always empty. I arrived at 11:58 p.m. The doors slid open automatically, and a rush of stale air hit my face. I stepped inside. The automatic doors slid shut behind me with a loud thud, louder than it should have been. The store was massive, but eerily silent. Every aisle was stocked perfectly. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make me uneasy. The self-checkout machines were on, their screens glowing in the dim store, but there was no one inside. No employees, no customers, no managers, just me. Then, I saw the tablet on the front desk. A sticky note was stuck to it. Read this first. I picked it up and tapped the screen. A single document was open. Night Shift Protocol 1. Between 12 a.m. and 12:15 a.m. You may hear the doors open and close. Do not check. No one is there. 2. If you see someone browsing aisle 14, do not approach them. They do not like to be seen. They will know. 3. At 1 a.m., you will receive a mobile notification from an unknown sender. Do not open it. Delete it immediately. 4. If a woman in soaking wet clothes enters the store, she will ask you for help. Do not answer. Do not look at her directly. If she stops speaking, hide immediately. 5. Between 2:30 a.m. and 2:45 a.m., the security cameras will turn to face you. Stay completely still. They will reset if you do not move. 6. If you see a shopping cart moving on its own, turn around and count to 10 before looking again. 7. If you hear your own voice over the intercom, leave the building immediately. Your shift is over. I read the list twice. Then, the automatic doors slid open again. I felt something just walked in. A wave of cold air swept through the store. I gripped the tablet tighter and stared straight ahead. A minute passed. Then another. Nothing. I forced myself to breathe and turned toward the aisles. They were still empty. I grabbed a pricing gun and started my shift. But I knew I wasn't alone. At 12:14 a.m., I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound. A soft scrape, like something shifting against the shelves. It wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of the near-empty store, it might as well have been a gunshot. My breath hitched, and an uneasy chill ran down my spine. Instinctively, I turned my head ever so slightly toward the source. Aisle 14. A woman stood there. Her back faced me, her posture rigid, unnatural. At first glance, nothing seemed off. She was dressed casually, in jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers, just like any other late-night shopper. But something about her sent alarm bells ringing in my head. She wasn't moving, not browsing, not scrolling through her phone like anyone else would be. Just standing there, completely still. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the shopping basket in my hand. Slowly, cautiously, I took a step back, careful not to make a sound. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, her head twitched. Not a normal turn, not a slow, curious glance. Just a twitch, a sharp, unnatural jerk, like a glitched frame in a corrupted video file. My stomach clenched, and my breathing grew shallow. Do not approach them. The rule echoed in my mind, a desperate warning. They do not like to be seen. They will know. I forced my gaze away, keeping my movements controlled, my pace steady. Act normal. Do not react. Do not let them know. As I turned the corner, my eyes flicked up, just for a second, to the convex security mirror mounted on the ceiling. She was facing me now, and she was smiling. A slow, unnatural grin stretched across her face. Wide and wrong. What the hell was that? The thought slammed into my mind, but I swallowed the scream threatening to rise in my throat. My fingers curled into a fist as I fought to steady my breathing. This wasn't my imagination. This was real. I was having a truly fearful conversation with myself. Then, at exactly 1 a.m., my phone vibrated. A single notification appeared on the screen. The sender was unknown. Are you alone? It read. A nauseating wave of dread rolled through me. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone tighter. Everything was happening just as the rules described. No more second guessing. No more hesitation. I needed to follow them. And as per the rule 3, at 1 a.m., you will receive a mobile notification from an unknown sender. Do not open it. Delete it immediately. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but doubt crept in. What if? Another message read. You shouldn't be. The air grew dense, pressing against my chest like a heavy weight. The fluorescent lights above flickered. The buzz of electricity suddenly too loud, too erratic. The self-checkout screen glitched. Numbers blinked in and out, meaningless digits flashing faster than I could process. Delete it. Delete it. Delete it. Now, I pressed the button. The second I did, something moved behind the counter. I was literally trembling. My body wasn't just reacting to fear. It was reacting to something else. Something deeper. Something unnatural. This superstore was alive. Not in a metaphorical way. Not in the way a place feels unsettling at night. No, this place knew I was here. It was watching, shifting, reacting to me in ways I couldn't fully understand. And then, at exactly 1:37 a.m., the automatic doors slid open again. The sound sent a bolt of pure dread through me. I knew what was coming before I even turned around. I knew, because I had read the rules, because the pattern was repeating itself. A woman, she stood there, unmoving, her clothes soaking wet. Her jeans clung to her legs, heavy with water. Her hoodie sagged, dripping onto the floor in slow, steady drops. Her sneakers made a sickening, squelching noise as she stepped forward, leaving behind dark, glistening footprints on the tiles. She was shivering, violently. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, her fingers digging into her sleeves. Then, through chattering teeth, she spoke. Please, she gasped, her voice fragile and broken. Can you help me? I clenched my jaw, forcing my hands to grip the metal shelf beside me. My nails dug into the cold steel as I fought against every natural instinct telling me to respond. Don't answer. Don't answer. Don't answer. She sucked in a sharp, trembling breath. Hello. I kept my gaze locked on the reflection in the freezer door. The glass was fogged up near the edges, but I could still see her outline, her damp, shaking form standing just a few feet behind me. If a woman in soaking wet clothes enters the store, she will ask you for help. Do not answer. Do not look at her directly. I kept repeating the rule in my mind. A dark puddle spread beneath her feet, the water seeping into the grout lines between the tiles. She took a step closer. Please. I think someone's following me. My fingers dug deeper into the shelf. The metal was cold, grounding me. I focused on the feeling, on the pressure, anything to drown out the unbearable urge to turn around. And then, she stopped speaking. My stomach dropped. A sharp chill ran up my spine, curling around my ribcage like an icy hand. The rule, if she stopped speaking, hide. Immediately. I didn't hesitate. I backed away slowly, each step measured and careful. Then, the moment I rounded the corner, I ran, bolting toward the stockroom. I didn't dare look back. The moment my fingers touched the door handle, I yanked it open and threw myself inside. I slammed the door shut and crouched low, pressing my back against the wall, heart hammering so hard it hurt. Then, the wet footsteps started again. Squelch, squelch. The sound grew louder, closer, right outside the door. Then, bang. I jumped as the door rattled in its frame. Another bang. The second hit was harder. My breath caught in my throat. A third. The whole door shuddered, the hinges groaning under the impact. Then suddenly, silence. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stayed curled up in that freezing stockroom, arms wrapped around my knees, staring at the door until my vision blurred. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. When I finally checked the time, it was 2:30 a.m. I was exhausted, completely drained. My body felt weak. My mind stretched thin. The nightmare wasn't ending. It just kept going. I forced myself to keep working, anything to distract myself. I was restocking frozen pizzas, trying to focus on something normal, when the rules flashed in my mind again. Rule 5. Between 2:30 a.m. and 2:45 a.m., the security cameras will turn to face you. Stay completely still. They will reset if you do not move. A cold dread spread through my chest. Slowly I lifted my head. The cameras had moved. Every single one. The cameras above the aisles, the ones near the checkout lanes, even the tiny camera above the freezer section. All of them, facing me, watching, my entire body locked up. Stay completely still. They will reset if you do not move. I obeyed. Seconds ticked by. My muscles screamed, but I didn't dare shift. A minute passed. Another. Then, the cameras rotated, turning back to their original positions, as if nothing had ever happened. I let out a shaky breath, pressing my palms together. My legs felt weak, my hands clammy with sweat, but I was still here. Please God, I begged silently, let me be bored. Let me be so bored. I start counting tiles on the floor. I don't want anything else. No more rules, no more sounds, no more things. Just let the rest of the night crawl by in dull, mind-numbing peace. But of course, at 3:30 a.m. I heard it. A slow, rhythmic squeak. It echoed softly across the empty aisles, stretching through the silence of the store. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse. A lone shopping cart rolled past the end of my aisle. No one was pushing it. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers tightened around the cardboard box I was holding. The rule, I knew what to do. Turn around, count to 10, then look again. I swallowed hard and forced my eyes shut. 1, 2, 3. The cart's wheels screeched, a slow piercing sound that made my skin crawl. 4, 5, 6. The noise stopped. 7, 8, 9. Silence. 10. I opened my eyes and turned my head. The cart was gone, but on the floor right where it had been was a single wet footprint. I inhaled sharply, the kind of footprint you leave behind when you step out of a puddle. Dark, soaked, fresh. I want to go home. I don't care about finishing my shift. I don't care about the money. I don't even care if I get fired. This place is wrong. Every inch of it is infected with something I don't understand. Something that bends reality like it's a loose thread on a sweater. I made my decision before anything else could happen. Before the next rule came into play, I was leaving. But just as I started to move, I heard it. At 3:57 a.m., my own voice crackled over the intercom. At first, it was just my name, over and over and over again, a robotic echo bouncing off the empty aisles. Then, it laughed, a deep, distorted version of my own laugh, warped and broken, stretching unnaturally through the speakers, twisting into something that wasn't me anymore. That was it. I dropped everything. The box hit the floor with a dull thud and I ran. I didn't look back, didn't stop, didn't care about the rules anymore. I tore through the aisles, past the self-checkout, past the registers, past the automatic doors, and the moment I crossed the threshold, everything went silent. Not just quiet, silent, like the air had been sucked out of the world. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then behind me, there was nothing. No store, no parking lot lights, no shopping carts lined up outside, just an empty lot, a stretch of dirt and cracked pavement. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers. The screen lit up. A single notification. Your shift has ended. We'll see you tomorrow. I stared at it. My hands went cold. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just stood there, alone, in an empty lot, with nowhere left to go. I work the night shift at a local hotel. As what I refer to as a multi-hatter, I do check-ins, security, cleaning, and even some maintenance. I excel in working alone, so in a lot of ways, it is the perfect gig for me. The hotel mostly caters to business people, being situated in a technology hub, so I do not have many experiences stranger than responding to noise complaints and figuring out who accidentally handed over a tablet kept in storage to the wrong guest. A few months ago I did, however, learn why knocking 3 times before entering a guest room is absolutely crucial. Such a rule was established to protect employees from the dreaded situation of walking in on a guest showering or witnessing an affair taking place, which is, arguably, one of the most painful non-criminal circumstances that a hotel worker could ever hope to respond to. As I learned, however, even these situations could be trumped by those simply bizarre. While I was killing some time deep cleaning the tiles in our pool room, the other employee on duty radioed me, requesting that I go to one of the guest rooms to turn off the AC unit. This was a pretty common request, as a lot of our guests are foreign employees who prefer warmer sleeping conditions and become uncomfortable when the air gets too chilly. Apparently, the employee said the room I needed to go to was #342, but I misheard him and went to #346. I got to the door and knocked once and heard no response. I knocked a second time and was met with the same silence. I deduced that the occupant had probably gone out to smoke or to the ice room, so I let myself in with the intention of quickly deactivating the AC unit so I could quickly get back to what I was doing. I unlocked the door with my master key chip, entered, and walked across the room to the airflow console and turned it off. I was headed back to the door when I heard a strange tapping noise coming from the bathroom. At first began to book it to the door, suspecting that it was someone on the toilet, but upon glancing over my shoulder, I noticed that the bathroom door was cracked and had the lights turned off. Rather than investigating the matter further, I decided to just leave the room before I would find myself in a potentially compromising situation. I left and quietly closed the door behind me. The rest of the night went by as uneventfully as usual. The next day, I clocked in and, as I often did, got a cup of coffee and sat at the back office computer in order to go over the event log and see if there was anything I needed to know before beginning work. The very first thread I opened indicated that room #346 was off limits to employees and guests alike for reasons that could not be discussed on our log. The front office manager on the day shift said that further details could be provided, with certain limitations, via one of the managers in person. Because there was no manager on the night shift, I decided to inquire in the morning to the GM when she came on duty. When I spoke to her, she said that the police contacted them the previous morning and said that an individual, classified as a DMIO, dangerous mentally ill offender posing as a traveling quality control officer for a local corporation, rented that room out the previous night. Just after I went off duty, a guest reported seeing an individual displaying manic mannerisms barreling down one of the service staircases before exiting the building and sprinting down the sidewalk toward a bus stop. The manager, concerned by the report, called the non-emergent police to attempt locating the individual and following up with an inspection of #346 if necessary, for good measure. Apparently, the room was rather undisturbed for having been occupied the previous night. In the bathroom, however, there were various tools used for photo development, assorted bladed items including a surgical scalpel, a hacksaw, and a hunting knife, and a roll of negatives hidden behind the toilet. While there was no disclosure on what was on the negatives, the police told her that they had been on a manhunt all night for an individual matching the guest's description of the individual who was being pursued after his girlfriend was found cut into pieces and sprawled throughout his apartment, nearing the end of a probationary period following his discharge from a years-long stay at a state mental institution. My heart sank as I realized that, without even realizing it at the time, the tapping I heard coming from the bathroom was either from him sterilizing murder weapons or developing photos of his crime. Later that day, I met with the police for an interview but could not provide useful information. I learned a valuable lesson. Make sure you knock 3 times before entering a room, just in case one walks in on something awful. Additionally, the poor guest in #342 never had his AC unit disabled. Jake Mitchell was a 25-year-old college dropout, scraping by on the night shift at the Quick Mart, a 24-hour convenience store perched on a lonely stretch of highway just outside Springfield. The gig wasn't much: stocking shelves, mopping floors, and ringing up the occasional trucker or drunk. But it kept his student loans at bay. The store sat isolated, surrounded by dark fields, with only the hum of passing traffic to break the silence. Jake didn't mind the solitude, at least, not until that night. It was a Tuesday just past 1 a.m., and Jake was behind the counter, flipping through a dog-eared magazine to kill the boredom. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and he glanced up. A man stepped inside, tall and gaunt, draped in a long dark coat that seemed out of place for the mild fall weather. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes hid behind scratched sunglasses. Weird, sure, but Jake had seen plenty of oddballs on the graveyard shift. "Evening," Jake said, pasting on a half-hearted smile. The man didn't reply. He just stood there, head cocked slightly, like he was listening to something far off. After an awkward pause, he shuffled toward the back of the store, vanishing behind the aisles. Jake shrugged and returned to his magazine, but a prickling unease settled into his gut. Something about the guy didn't sit right. Minutes ticked by, and the man didn't come back. Curious, Jake checked the security monitor. 4 grainy screens showing the store's interior. There he was, standing in front of the refrigerated drinks, perfectly still, not browsing, not reaching for anything, just staring at the glass doors. Probably stoned, Jake told himself. Though his pulse quickened, he kept an eye on the screen. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The guy didn't move an inch. Jake grabbed the store phone, ready to call the cops if things got dicey. But the line was dead. "Figures," he muttered. "The power lines out here were flaky at best." Right then, the lights flickered, the refrigerator's hum faltered, and the store went dark for a heartbeat before the backup generator kicked in, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Jake's breath hitched. He looked back at the monitor, and the man was gone. "Hey," Jake called, his voice bouncing off the empty aisles. "You still here?" Silence. He grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and stepped out, sweeping the beam across the store. The aisles were deserted, the back exit was locked tight, and the bathroom was empty. No sign of the guy anywhere. It was like he'd evaporated. Shaking his head, Jake returned to the counter, chalking it up to fatigue. That's when he noticed it. A dark, wet smear on the floor near the coolers. He crouched down, shining his light. It looked like blood, still glistening, with a faint trail of droplets leading toward the stockroom. His stomach twisted. Maybe he cut himself, Jake thought, grasping for logic. Or it's just soda. But the metallic tang in the air said otherwise. He followed the trail to the stockroom door, which stood slightly ajar. Odd, since he always kept it locked. Pushing it open, he stepped into the dim, cluttered space. Shelves towered overhead, and a single bulb flickered weakly. The blood trail snaked to the back corner, where a stack of crates lay toppled, and there, smeared on the wall in jagged crimson letters, were the words, "Don't look behind you." Jake's heart stopped. He whirled around, flashlight darting, but the room was empty. His breath came in shallow gasps. "It's a prank," he insisted to himself. "Some jerk messing with me." But the writing looked too fresh, too real. He stumbled out, slammed the door, and bolted to the front of the store. The automatic doors were jammed open, grinding uselessly. The parking lot stretched out dark and empty, save for Jake's rusty sedan. The night was unnaturally still. No wind, no crickets. He tried the phone again. Still dead. His cell showed no bars, which made no sense. He always had signal here. Then came the sound. A faint rhythmic scratching, like nails dragging across glass. It was coming from the security monitor. Dread coiled in Jake's chest as he turned to look. On the screen showing the back of the store, the man in the coat stood facing the camera. His sunglasses were gone, revealing hollow black sockets where eyes should have been. His mouth stretched into a wide, unnatural grin, and he raised a bony hand pointing straight at the lens, straight at Jake. The lights flickered again, and the monitor dissolved into static. Jake staggered back, knocking over a rack of chips. When the screen cleared, the man was gone, but something else moved in the corner. A shadow, tall and impossibly thin, its limbs bending at sickening angles. Panic seized him. He had to get out. Grabbing his keys, he sprinted for the doors, but the lights died completely, plunging the store into blackness. The doors slammed shut with a thunderous clang. He yanked at them, but they held fast. His chest tightened, his breath ragged. A voice whispered behind him, low and raspy, "Don't look behind you." Every nerve screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. Against every shred of reason, he turned. The store was pitch black, but the faint red glow of the emergency exit sign outlined a shape, a figure crawling along the ceiling, its body contorted, its head twisting to face him. Those hollow eyes locked onto his, and its grin widened, splitting its face ear to ear. Jake screamed, the flashlight slipping from his hand. It hit the floor, spinning wildly. The thing dropped with a wet thud and scuttled toward him, bones cracking with each jerking step. He scrambled back, crashing into the counter. Then, just as suddenly, the lights snapped back on. The store was silent, empty. No creature, no man, no blood on the floor. Jake lay there panting, his mind reeling. The doors slid open smoothly, like nothing had happened. He stumbled to his feet, grabbed his keys and ran to his car, peeling out of the lot without a backward glance. As he tore down the highway, the quick mart fading in his rear view, Jake tried to convince himself it was all in his head. Exhaustion, a bad dream, anything. But when he glanced at the passenger seat, his heart seized. There sat the man's dark coat, neatly folded, damp with something that reeked of copper. Jake quit the next day, moved 2 towns over, and swore he'd never work a night shift again. But even now, in the dead of night, he sometimes hears that scratching, like nails on glass, and feels those empty eyes watching from the dark.